Okay, the reading for this week is the next part in our series on pre-modern, medieval, and early modern Japanese civilization, culture, and religion. And today we will be reading excerpts from the History of the Kingdom of Wei, or Weizhi, which is a Chinese document that was written about the Japanese people, supposedly about the Japanese people, around the year 297 CE. So this is long before the Nara period, long before the Heian period. And just to review the Japanese dates in the Japan chronology that I will put in the description to this video. We have the Jōmon culture, which begins around 4000 BCE, and that lasts nearly 4,000 years, all the way to the Yayoi culture, which starts around 300 BC. And then we have the tomb period, or the Kofun period, Kofun, the old tomb period, which is from 250 to 538 CE, followed by the Asuka Jidai, the Asuka Era, which is 538 to 710. Okay, so this essay that we're reading today is from 297, so this is right in the first part of the Kofun, or the old tomb period. Okay. So we will read excerpts from this text that was written by the Chinese, and then discuss its major points and so forth later in class. So here's the introduction. Once again, the English translation of this text is taken from sources of Japanese tradition, 2001. Columbia University Press. I'll put the link to that book in the description below so you can purchase and follow along. And the PDF worksheets were compiled by somebody at Columbia University. I'll put the link to that in the description below as well. Okay, here's the introduction to the history of the Kingdom of Wei, or Weizhi. Some of the earliest descriptions of Japan appear in Chinese dynastic histories, official documents commissioned by China's imperial rulers. The Weizhi, or the history of the Kingdom of Wei, from around 297 CE, included an extended account of Japan, which was called Wa by the Japanese, or by the Chinese, in an appendix chronicling the various barbarian peoples on China's borders. Okay, so the Chinese officials of 297 CE, so this is just after the fall of the Han Dynasty. They made a survey of all the surrounding so-called barbarian peoples, and among those peoples was the Japanese people, and they included it in their report. This discussion of early Japanese society and government is particularly noteworthy for its focus on somebody called Pimiko, sometimes called Himiko as well, but Pimiko is the classical pronunciation of it, the Queen of Wa. The so-called Queen of Wa, named Pimiko. Since Pimiko does not appear in indigenous Japanese records of the nation's early history, the identity and the very existence of Pimiko have long been subjects of active debate among historians. It is interesting to note that although Japanese law today forbids a woman from becoming emperor, there is a long tradition of female rulers in Japan, starting back to the controversial Pimiko. Okay. So in class, we'll review the Pimiko is not the only woman who became emperor, according to legend. There are several others, and we'll review those later in class. Okay, here are the excerpts from the Weizhi, History of the Kingdom of Wei. And there are several. Before I read the excerpt, I'm going to read the study questions. There are 4 this time. Let me read them very quickly. Question number 1, what sense of early Japanese society do you get from this passage? Okay, so what sort of society is this? Japanese society in the around 300 AD or CE. Why do you think the Chinese considered the Japanese barbarians? Question 2. How is Pimiko described in this account? Okay, so this one's about the character and personality and role and status and so forth of this character of the Empress Pimiko. Question 3. Why might Pimiko have sought a relationship with China? Why would China have been interested in engaging these so-called barbarians? Okay, so according to one account, because there are no Japanese documents that prove the existence of Pimiko, some have said that she was eventually defeated by the warring factions that surrounded her, and because her little kingdom within Japan was smaller and not as strong as the others, she sought an alliance with the Chinese to help her cause, but was eventually defeated, is one take or one interpretation of the events that I've come across in the past. And number 4 is, how trustworthy would you consider this account? What makes it ring true? What makes it sound suspicious? Okay, so this is similar to the activity that I always have my students do when we read a work of literature. We read it and then assess the shinpyōsei, or the reliability of each of the characters in the work, of the major characters. So they'll rate character X, they'll give him a score of 8 on a 10 scale in terms of his reliability of what he's saying, and then rate somebody else a different number. Okay, different score. Okay, here's the excerpt from History of the Kingdom of Weizhi. The people of Wa, Japan, dwell in the middle of the ocean on the mountainous islands southeast of the prefecture of Daifang. They formerly comprised more than 100 communities. During the Han Dynasty, so remember this is 297 AD or CE, so the Han Dynasty had just fallen almost a century earlier. During the Han Dynasty, which corresponds to the Roman Empire, remember the Han Dynasty, 200 BC to 200 AD approximately. During the Han Dynasty, the Kingdom of Wa envoys appeared at the court. Today, 30 of their communities maintain intercourse with us through envoys and scribes. In their meetings and in their deportment, there is no distinction between father and son or between men and women. Okay, so the author of this piece is saying that the Japanese are barbaric because they do not know the Confucian norms, right, between the proper relationship between father and son, man and woman. They are fond of liquor. In their worship, men of importance simply clap their hands instead of kneeling or bowing. So basically the Japanese are barbarians because they're not proper junsa. They don't have any proper Confucian gentlemen. The people live long, some to 100 and others to 80 or 90 years. So we can say the same about the Japanese today, right? They live longer than most peoples of the world. Ordinarily, men of importance have 4 or 5 wives. Okay, so polygamy is another characteristic. According to this, ipputasai, as we say in Japanese, the lesser men have 2 or 3 wives. Women are not loose in morals or jealous. There is no theft, and litigation is infrequent. In cases of violation of the law, the light offender loses his wife and children by confiscation. As for the grave offender, the member of his household and also his kinsmen are exterminated. So they have harsh punishments for grave offenses. There are class distinctions among the people. So this is before the Confucian hierarchy of Shino, Kosho enters into Japan, but nevertheless they have their own indigenous class distinctions, he's saying here. And some men are vassals of others. Continuing, the country formerly had a man as ruler. For some 70 or 80 years after that, there were disturbances and warfare. Thereupon the people agreed upon a woman for their ruler, namely Pimiko. Her name was Pimiko. She occupied herself with magic and sorcery, bewitching the people. Though mature in age, she remained unmarried. She had a younger brother who assisted her in ruling the country. After she became the ruler, there were few who saw her. She had 1,000 women as attendants, but only one man. He served her food and drink and acted as a medium of communication. She resided in a palace surrounded by towers and stockades, with armed guards in a state of constant vigilance. In the 6th month of the 2nd year of Jingchu, so this is the Chinese calendar, right? 238 CE, right after the fall of the Han Dynasty. In the 6th month of 238 CE, the Queen of Wa, namely Pimiko, sent the grandee Nashomi and others to visit the prefecture of Daifang, where they requested permission to proceed to the emperor's court with tribute. The governor, Liu Xia, dispatched an officer to accompany the party to the capital. In answer to the Queen of Wa, an edict of the emperor issued in the 12th month of the same year said as follows. So here's an edict from the emperor addressing Pimiko. Herein we address Pimiko, Queen of Wa, whom we now officially call a friend of Wei. The governor of Daifang, so this is, the 6 dynasties period. Remember, Wei is one of the dynasties within the 6 dynasty periods that followed the fall of the Han Dynasty. Okay, we officially call Pimiko a friend of Wei Dynasty. The governor of Daifang, Liu Xia, has sent a messenger to accompany your vassal, Nashomi, and his lieutenant, Tsushi Gori. They have arrived here with your tribute, consisting of 4 male slaves and 6 female slaves, together with 2 pieces of cloth with designs, each 20 feet in length. You live very far away across the sea, yet you have sent an embassy with tribute. Your loyalty and filial piety, or xiao, and loyalty, zhong, remember the cardinal Confucian virtues, we appreciate exceedingly. We confer upon you, therefore, the title Queen of Hua, friendly to Wei, together with the decoration of the gold seal with purple ribbon. Remember, purple is often the color of the imperial regime. The latter, properly encased, is to be sent to you through the governor. We expect you, O Queen, to rule your people in peace and to endeavor to be devoted and obedient. When Pimiko passed, and that's the end of the letter of the end of the response from the emperor, right? Okay, and continuing. When Pimiko passed away, a great mound was raised, more than 100 paces in diameter. Over 100 male and female attendants followed her to the grave. Then a king was placed on the throne, but the people would not obey him. They wanted their queen Pimiko back. Assassination and murder followed. More than 1,000 were thus slain. A relative of Pimiko named Iyo, a girl of 13, was then made queen. So the people demand a queen. They don't want a king. They demand a matriarchy. Was then made queen and order was restored. Zheng, the Chinese ambassador, issued a proclamation to the effect that Iyo was the ruler. Then Iyo sent a delegation of 20 under the grandee Yazaku, general of the imperial guard, to accompany Zheng home to China. The delegation visited the capital and presented 30 male and female slaves, so the capital of the Wei dynasty in the 6 kingdoms. It also offered to the court 5,000 white gems and 2 pieces of carved jade, as well as 20 pieces of brocade with variegated designs. Okay, so this, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, this translation is taken from sources of Japanese tradition, but it was originally published in a book called Japan in the Chinese Dynastic Histories, written by Tsunoda and Goodrich. Okay, we'll discuss more about Pimiko and about the veracity and the reliability of this account written around 297 later in class. I will see you then. Goodbye.